What's going on, everyone? I am back from Daytona Speedway. The C8 did great, but there are definitely a few things you should know if you want to get a new C8 Z06. When GM came out with the Z06, it was mind-blowing. I mean, everybody was raving about it, and I'm one of those people, right? You know, you have a flat plane crank V8 pushing out 670 horsepower, dual clutch transmission, mid-engine. I mean, phenomenal. I love it when brands push the limits, but there's always a price to pay for being an early adopter. And there's plenty of things that I would love to tell you that are amazing about this car, but there's definitely a few things that are wrong with it. Let me pull it out and show you what I'm talking about. All right, I got the Z06 pulled out, and it looks like it's a good thing because apparently I really need to clean my garage. I don't know if that shows up on camera, but that is gross to say the least. All right, so here she is. This is a 2024 Corvette Z06. This is a 3LT, so it has a lot of the upgrades, the perks, all the fun stuff. I did not do the carbon ceramic brakes. I knew I was going to be tracking it a lot. Really, the primary purpose for this car is a dedicated track car for me. And, you know, I didn't want to go chew through $8,000 rotors all the time. So this is it. And let me tell you something, she has been absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to go in through, out of all the cars I've owned, this is one of my favorites, if not my top. But again, it's not without its faults. So if you're new to the channel, if you don't know who I am, my name is Corey Schaffer. I am the founder of Till Valhalla Project. I have several other missions that I am in charge of and companies that I've grown. And now I spend most of my time either making an impact, doing philanthropy, donating money, putting on events, and taking veterans and first responders for rides in cars like this. So I'm going to go through and show you everything that I personally believe is wrong with this car. All right, I have her opened up, and I will go through a couple of these things. First thing, and it has nothing to do with GM, people are charging crazy markups on these things. I mean, there's people who are charging $30,000, $40,000, even more over MSRP just to get one of these things. People are price gouging them, and it's extremely unfortunate that a car that was supposed to be brought to the market, that was supposed to be so attainable, is a little bit more out of reach than it is originally. Now, thankfully, at this point in time, prices have gotten a lot better. If you look really, really hard and you look outside of your state and somebody ships it in, you can usually get it for a pretty good deal. I had to get this one shipped in from California all the way to Florida just to get a good deal on this one. So again, not the car's fault, not GM's fault, but that is definitely a downside. Now, let's talk about the actual car. One of the first things that struck me as odd with this vehicle was the engine ran extremely rough when I got it. It didn't seem like it was firing on all cylinders. I was calling up my buddies and saying, hey, is this the way it is? And they're like, oh, well, that's just the way flat plane crank engines run. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem to make sense to me. But after about 400 miles, all the quirks kind of worked itself out. So that was definitely a little sketchy. Was in the beginning thinking maybe I got a bad engine, but it did work itself out. That was a little odd. I bought this car with 4 miles on it. This shipped from California, I think with like 2 miles, and by the time it got to me, it had 4 miles on it. And the battery showed up dead. And I tried to charge it, I tried to do whatever I could with it, and it was faulty. Obviously, trying to use the car, I didn't want to wait for a warranty or anything like that, but it has been a known problem with these batteries to go dead extremely fast. And you might say, well, who cares? It's a battery. The problem is this car will throw all sorts of codes. It told me my rear axle was bad. It told me my transmission didn't work. It told me that I even had situations where not only would it not start, but the car, even to this day, even after swapping the battery, I have a remote start problem, and I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, when these cars are low on battery, it really throws a fit. So, and it's not always very obvious. I mean, you have your car attached to your phone, but it's always trying to give you updates. It's always trying to do all these things, but it doesn't always let you know when something goes awry. So this battery had been bad for a while, and it threw a lot of codes. Since I've swapped that battery, it's been gone. So, but yes, the batteries suck. All right, so let's talk interior for a second. So I love the quality of the interior. I feel like for the price point, GM really outdid themselves. It's really soft. It does not creak a lot. There's not a lot to complain about. But one of the first things I did notice when walking in and picking up this car for the first time was the gaps can be kind of ridiculous. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So you can see small things like this, right? You got panel gaps, I don't know, maybe the tip of my finger here, but then you look over here and that gap is so much bigger. And you have little situations like that all the way around as far as like little gaps, things that are inconsistent. And, you know, it's just, it doesn't feel cheaply made, but there's definitely been some oversights with the interior as far as like gaps, stitching, that type of stuff. So again, is it worth, you know, calling GM to try to get it fixed? Probably not. I'm not that worried about it, but you know, it's a track car. It's probably gonna get pretty beat up, but still for somebody who spends, you know, let's say 130, you know, maybe they spend 110 to 130. If you're spending over 6 figures for a car, or if really, if you're spending any of your hard-earned money on a car, it should meet a certain quality standard. So I think we have to remember that GM made this as affordable as possible. It's just the dealers that have made it so expensive to obtain. So I gave them a pass on it, but yeah, there's definitely some stuff, and the plastic is pretty easy to scratch as well, but I've kind of gotten over it. Again, it's a track car. It's probably going to see much worse. All right, so these last two are pretty serious. So this car, I have had transmission problems with already, and I've had it in 2 ways. So the first one is sometimes when you're driving aggressively, the transmission will completely skip out on you, or it won't shift and whatnot. Now, going back through like the data recorder on the track, I can see that traction control is kicking in, and it kind of gives more of an illusion that a transmission is slipping. However, when I am in touring mode, let's say like after I've done some spirited driving, and I go back to touring mode, what ends up happening is it seems like the transmission is not engaging fast enough, and it seems like it overcorrects. And what ends up happening is you'll see my RPMs jump just slightly right before the shift, and it's not consistent. You know, let's say first through second is pretty good, third and fourth slip. You know, you'll see it going, and then it'll go whoop before it goes, and it's a clear slip. Don't know what that means. I don't know if the transmission is actually bad. I have been driving the absolute hell out of this thing. Just came from Daytona. I got it to almost 174 miles an hour, and I think I have 2,500 miles on this car, and I would say maybe 2,000 of those are track miles. So I have been going absolutely crazy with this car at the track. So I am trying to break it while it's under warranty, if it's going to break at all. And the transmission is definitely one of the weakest spots that I think if something's going to fail, I think it's going to be here. All right, and that leads me to my last one that is possibly transmission related. I don't know if anyone's figured it out yet. So I'm gonna turn the camera around. This car does not like to remote start, and you would think, okay, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I'm doing, you know, pressing the button out of sequence. Maybe I'm doing something, you know, on my part. Well, it turns out that it's a much bigger issue. So I was out at the track, and we were about to go catch some lunch after some, you know, beating on the car, and I tried to remote start it, and it didn't work. So I said, okay, well, you know, whatever. I guess I must be doing it wrong again. Then I got in the car, and I put my foot on the brake, and I tried to hit the push to start button, and it didn't work. And I could not get this car to start. This is after a new battery. This is after everything. And I started to think, I'm like, what could I be doing wrong? And I realized just by like looking at the dash and looking at the lights and stuff that, you know, it still thought the car was locked. It still thought this. You know, the car was obviously confused. So it's like a software bug. So I'm like, all right, but nobody could get the car to start. So then I get out, I shut the door, I lock it, I unlock it, I lock it, I unlock it again. I get back in, I'm able to start it. Perfect. Okay. So I shut the door. We go to dinner. I get out, I shut the door, we go to dinner, and then I'm like, well, let me try again. It remote starts this time, but the car lurches forward, making me think that the first gear is not disengaged. So that scared me. The car is lurching, and then, you know, I have my lift up here, so I had the Z06 on the top of the lift, and I stopped remote starting it on the lift because when I brought it home and I remote started it again, it lurched forward again. And I basically said it's not worth the, whatever the situation is, it's not worth it. But what happens is a lot of times this car won't start when I double tap the remote start. It'll act like it's about to, but then it doesn't. And what I believe it is I believe that when you're sitting in the car and you go to start it, there's a lot less sensors that need to be, there's a lot less conditional logic that needs to be triggered in order to get the car to start, because it knows your butt is in the seat, your foot is on the brake. You know, that kind of bypasses any other coding that's there. But when you're outside of the car, it needs to do a systems check to make sure, hey, it's not gonna, you know, it's not in first gear, it's not this, it's not that. And so that way it doesn't, you know, you don't get a runaway car. And I believe that's where my problem is. I think my car has a transmission issue that doesn't allow it to disengage from first, Therefore, anytime I'm outside of the car, it doesn't want to remote start, except for whenever the transmission wants to cooperate. And if it does not start when I hit it, I believe it confuses the car to the point where I can't even start it from the inside. So then you have to get out and go and act like you're gonna start it, lock it, unlock it, all this other stuff to kind of reset the computer. And yeah, so it's odd. And a lot of people are up in arms about it because they got their issues. But I'm like, at the end of the day, it's a beautiful car. It's an absolute track weapon. It is a freaking blast to drive. It really, it revs like a monster, and it can keep up with so many other things. And it's really just like, you can beat the hell out of it all day and don't have to worry about it doing something weird after you get past those little quirks. And again, I'm driving it aggressively now because if it's gonna break, I need it to break under warranty. I have a suspicion that between the engines and transmissions, these things are going to fail. And I know for some people that's a deal breaker, but for me, I don't mind. It's one of those things where I say, hey, if that's the cost of being an early adopter to such a beautiful, beautiful car, then so be it. So that's it. But I wanted to make this video because, even though I'm out there doing things for people and having a lot of fun, I know what it's like to buy your first expensive car, or even your second or your third, and be let down by the experience. But went into this car, it's a completely different mindset. I said, listen, it's going to have its flaws. It is a brand new format. It has never been done before. It is going to break. It's going to be quirky. And honestly, it has a lot less going on than I thought it was going to have. And again, the transmission is working. It's not like it's breaking. It's not, it hasn't exploded under pressure. It's really just, I believe there's a lot of software bugs and coding conflicts that are stopping the car from really getting to that 100%, and it's probably at 95 now. If you can make traction control a little more lenient when, shifting through gears, that would be great. Maybe a different pullback, the throttle, versus a fuel cut. And if you could at least understand whether your car is stuck in first gear or not, would be a great one. Even a code or something like that pops up and says first gear engaged, and go see your dealer, that would be great as well. But again, the car not being able to start, there's people talking about how they had to get theirs towed. I wish I could have talked to them, because we were 2 seconds away from having to get the damn thing towed, and then I recognized the stuff on the dash and said, oh, the car's confused, you got to come back and reset it. So if you try to remote start your Corvette and it doesn't remote start, and then you try to go in and start it and it won't start, you either got to disconnect the battery or get out, roll your windows up, do all that fun stuff, get out, shut it, lock it, unlock it, lock it, unlock it, and kind of reset the whole thing. Kind of a silly thing to say for such a car, but it is what it is. But I don't regret my purchase, not even the slightest. And hopefully when the Z01 comes out, I'll be giving vets a ride in that if that car ends up being everything we think it's going to be. So yeah, that is the things that I dislike about the Corvette. But I'll tell you again, I wouldn't trade it for anything. All right, well, I'm gonna get back to making my normal videos, videos about philanthropy, about business growth, about cars, all these other things. I'm just excited to keep going on this journey. My companies are growing, and I'm just excited to get to the next level. So hopefully I can take you guys along with me. All right, I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks.